welcome to the BookFest Fall 2022. My name is Sharon Jenkins, and I'm the Master Communicator. And today's segment is it's a thriller with a chat with William Bernhardt, one of my most favorite authors in the entire world. He has written over 50 books and he is just a Renaissance author. He does a lot of stuff. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, good to be here. Good to see you, Sharon.
So, for our audience who doesn't have a clue about
Not even a
who you
clue?
are, not a clue,
Who
even
are these
though
people?
I don't know, but they've been in this world we live in. But you've
Yeah,
been doing this for some time, over
I
20
have.
years.
Over 30 years.
Woo!
First book was published in 91.
Wow, wow. And the latest book is Plot Counterplot. Now, I'm curious, in your thrillers, why did you pick that genre? I'm curious.
Well, here's where I tell you the true scoop. And, it's all kind of a continuum: mystery, suspense, thriller. These are labels publishers use to sell, but are not always what authors are thinking about. At any rate, I loved mysteries when I was younger. I mean, I still do, but the point is, that's what I was trying to do. I used the legal setting because I was a lawyer in a big firm in Tulsa at the time, and that was something I knew. And those were the ingredients that I put in. And the first book was a big hit, and I've been doing it ever since. But as those with long memories will remember, the 90s was very much a period where lawyer fiction, what we called legal thrillers, were very popular. And pretty soon people started applying legal thriller to anything involving lawyers, which really I wasn't entirely comfortable with, but whatever. Sometimes you just gotta, as we say in Oklahoma, shut up and dance with the girl that brung you. That's what I did.
Oh, I love it. I'm thinking about LA Law, all those
Yeah.
wonderful
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
things. It
Exactly.
yes, it was really
Perry
good.
Mason. That was more what I had in
Yes.
mind. But in time, I incorporated thriller elements, but tried to make it realistic. Sometimes, when I read books and there's, hapless lawyers running from mobsters, I think they would be rubbed out in 10 minutes. That's not even a contest. And all this shooting, and I don't buy it. But I tried to create suspense that was possibly a little more grounded in reality.
So let's talk about how you relate to your readers
hmm
because over 30 years, I'm sure you've got hundreds of thousands of readers. How do you keep them coming back for more?
Well, the answer to that is obvious. Write the best book that you can, and write what you think they want to read. That's another reason why I was uncomfortable being compared to other authors. I think I like other people, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing my own thing, and I think the people who have been the most devoted fans understand that there's a distinct flavor to my books, and whether I'm lawyers or not lawyers in this book, I try and put in the elements that people like, I think, snappy dialogue, a little humor, not so much that it dissipates the tension, but enough just to make the reading fun, likable characters trying to do good for other people. Those are kind of the hallmarks of first the Ben Kincaid series, and now I'm doing standalones like Plot Counterplot, or I've done the Daniel Pike books and the Kinsey Rivera books, and all different in their own way, but there are some common elements that I think keep people coming back even after all these years. This is my 59th book.
Oh, wow.
Pretty soon you're going to have to say over 60 books.
Oh, wow. I love it. I love it. So, one thing I'm curious about, how do you stay relevant?
hmm
Because there's so much that has happened in the last 30 years. How do you stay
Absolutely.
relevant?
No, I think that's a really good point. I try not to write books that are like preachy in the sense of here's what you ought to think, or directly commenting on what's going on in the world specifically, although there have been a few exceptions. But for the most part, I think one thing, readers don't like being clubbed over the head with a message, and for another, that's going to date the book. I mean, that book I wrote that was published in 91, people are still reading it 30 years later. And I keep that in mind when I'm writing things and try not to make it so tied to the here and the now that it doesn't have any relevance to people later on. There was a point, those Ben Kincaid books were very successful, but at one point I'd done 18 of them, and I thought, surely that's enough. I can't think of any more legitimate things to do with this character, so I took some time off and did other things and other kinds of books, and did and did things that didn't involve courtrooms, but eventually came back to it, as you already know, with the Daniel Pike books. But that was a different character, a really different kind of person in a different place, and as it turned out, a different time, because at least a decade had passed. And what really brought me to that first book, The Last Chance Lawyer, was thinking, here's something I haven't talked about before, that's relevant now, but will probably be relevant 30 years from now.
So I'm curious. Not only are you an author, but you're a podcaster. You
Mhm.
have a podcast and you
Yep.
have the most sensational guest on your
Thanks.
show. So tell us a little bit about the WriterCon podcast.
Well, as you just said, it's called WriterCon, just like the annual conference we do and the cruise we do and small group retreats throughout the year. But on the podcast, we chat, we talk about the latest news from the publishing world. That's relevant or useful to authors, because this is a podcast that's really designed for writers and people who aspire to write, people who are looking for tips and information about how to write better, how to break into the business. And then in the last section, as you've already indicated, we interview people, and we've had terrific guests. Who have we had in the past year? We've had Lemony Snicket, we've had Dean Koontz, we've had you, pretty much all the superstars, I think. So,
Well, I thank you for the compliment, but let's talk a little bit more about this cruise. I
mm,
understand
mhm.
WriterCon is actually going to get on a cruise.
We are. We've actually done it before, but of course during COVID that all went away. So this is going to be our first WriterCon cruise post lockdown, and I'm really excited about it. And I think others are as well, because the registrations have come fast and furious. It's basically a small group retreat on the ocean. I'll be there, and other writers and agents will be there to talk to people, but some of it will be a small classroom setting. Some of it will be very one-on-one, giving feedback on manuscripts, mentoring people. The whole course will be tailored around what these specific people in this room need most. Plus, you're on a cruise ship. So there's fabulous food and a big pool and lots of fun things to do. Lots of really interesting stops, Cozumel and Honduras, and other cool Western Caribbean sites.
So let's switch back to the reader.
Mhm.
I'm curious, as a writer, are there any of your characters that you absolutely fell in love with?
I think I kind of fell in love with all the characters that I wrote. I think you sort of have to if you're going to bring them to life on the page. And that's good guys and bad guys as well. I I try and find some port of entry, to use cruise talk, or some way to relate to the bad guys, thinking, okay, what could, even for mild mannered me, what would ever persuade me to do this horrible thing? What if? And then you start thinking, and that's how you build believable motivation for your characters, rather than just, I'm evil kind of guys, or, just greedy or superficial characters that really get to the heart of the way people think, and what causes people to do things like this. I mean, it has become apparent to me that in this world, nobody thinks they're the bad guy.
Mm.
Everybody thinks they're the hero of their own story, and if they do bad things, it's for a good reason, or it's because they're a victim, or it's because they have no choice. Or, I mean, some of the people who have created what we think of, at least here, as the most horrible things that ever happened, bombing Pearl Harbor or
Hmm.
9/11. Did the people flying those planes into the building think they were bad guys? No, they thought they were great political and religious heroes. So when you understand what really motivates people, I think you can create more true characters. And any thriller is going to need both good guys and bad guys, right? So that's been useful to me.
So I'm curious. You have a series titled
Hmm.
Splitsville.
Right.
I'm curious as to your why for writing about a Latina.
Hmm.
Tell me, I'm curious.
Well, I thought it was time. I mean, there's no point in creating a new series character if it's just going to be the same old, right?
Hmm.
It's not my first female series character. I did some books with a psychologist called Susan Pulaski once upon a time, but first person of color who's the lead character in the book, if you will. And at some point, you think I'm a little reluctant. This would never, if you were an actor in this day and age, you would never get away with playing somebody from a different race. Can you write it? And I just decided, yeah, I can. Just do your research and get it right. And so that's what I've been doing with those Kinsey books,
Well,
which
that
I loved writing.
that series is one of my favorites. So I had to ask that question.
Hmm.
Now I have another question for you. If I've never heard of you or your books, what would you say to me to get me to pick up one of your books?
Well, I would probably say something, I don't know, kind of superficial, like you're going to have a lot of fun. I can't guarantee, I think it should be your favorite book, but I can't guarantee that. I can't guarantee that you'll take something away from it or that you'll be moved, although I think you might be. But I can at least guarantee that you won't be bored because I've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this book and refined it. So at the very least, it's going to be fast paced and you'll enjoy the read and it'll probably be over before you realize it and you'll have an entertaining, good read.
So, last question, Bill.
Hmm.
I'm curious about your standalone latest
Hmm.
novel,
Yeah.
Plot Counterplot. Can you give us a brief synopsis of what that's all about?
Well, the central character, Dylan, is I don't know where I got this idea, but he's a thriller writer, see, and he's concocting all these outlandish schemes so that his series character can break into Fort Knox or whatever it is, this thing, doing the impossible basically over and over again. Of course, in the book, there are some of those bad guys I was just mentioned who think, that would be a useful guy to have on our team, especially now when we're going up after this governmental super weapon. And so they grab Dylan and try and force him to work for them. And so basically, we've got some master plotters scheming against one another and trying to stay one step ahead, pretending to help when they're not. And so it's plot counterplot, you see.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Intriguing.
Yeah.
I lied. I'm going to ask one more
Okay.
question. Listen, I want to know seriously, if I wanted to write my first novel, what advice would you have for me?
Well, the best advice I could probably give is commit to a schedule. I mean, if you're going to do it, really do it. Sit down and say, okay, I'm going to spend whatever you can, 2 hours a day before you go to work or after work or take a long lunch or whatever. I mean, 4 hours would be better, but whatever it is you can reasonably do, commit to that. In fact, in some of my books on writing, the first one's called Story Structure. I actually have a contract in the back of the book for people to tear out and sign and put on the refrigerator or whatever to say, I have made this commitment and I'm going to make myself, because it's too easy to find excuses for not writing. I'm sleepy, I'm tired, the laundry needs to be done. everything seems more attractive when you know you should be writing, but that's not how books get finished. And the truth is, if you can just finish a manuscript, you're already ahead of 99% of the people who think about writing a book. And then if you keep revising and get feedback from people, you're way ahead, which is why we have WriterCon and all these other programs. So, but all of that starts with writing the first book. So sit down and make yourself write.
Well, Bill, we want to say thank you so
You bet.
much for sharing your adventures with us. And thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you. And remember, Bill writes some sensational books. Run out and buy one today.
I like that. Excellent. Thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome. Bye bye.
Bye.